We ran into the house, yelling for my dad. He was already coming out the back door in response to our screams. I told him about the man who had been in our tent. My dad ran around the yard, shouting and taunting the creep to come back if he had any guts. We watched from the living room window as my mom called the police. When the police arrived, they took my statement and made a report. There wasn't much they could do, but at least the cops were now aware of a creep in the area. I never found out if that man ever came back to our property, or if he got in trouble for something similar elsewhere. Either way, it was a terrifying experience. We stayed inside for the rest of the night, too scared to go back outside. The memory of that stranger's face haunted me for a long time. Even now, years later, I still feel a shiver down my spine when I think about that night. It taught me that sometimes the real danger isn't from the dark woods or spooky stories, but from the strangers who can slip into our lives when we least expect it. When I was a kid, before we moved to Seattle, we lived in a small, quiet town in Oregon. Our house had a massive backyard that made me the envy of the neighborhood kids. Anytime playing outdoor games or sports was mentioned, my backyard was the place to go. We had an acre of land surrounded by dense pine forests on 3 sides, with a large spruce tree, a tire swing, and a tool shed. For a middle-class area, we really had everything you could want in a backyard. There was enough open grass to play soccer, baseball, football, anything. We even played hide and seek, or night prowlers as we called it. One Friday, when we were in 6th grade, my friends and I decided to have a camp-out sleepover in my backyard. It was Jake, Lucas, and Sam. We all had to get our parents' permission, of course, but we were around 11 or 12, and it was a Friday. None of our parents had any reason to say no. Plus, my family had lots of camping equipment, including 2 tents that could easily fit 2 of us each. After we all got permission, we made arrangements to meet at my house around 5 p.m. so we could play sports in the backyard. We had portable soccer nets that we used to play 2-on-2. We did that for about half an hour, then played baseball for another half hour. After sitting around for a few minutes to regain our energy, my parents ordered pizza for us, which we ate around 6:30 or 7 p.m. The sun was starting to go down, so it was time to set up the tents before it got too dark. I was pretty good at setting up tents because I was a Boy Scout and had recently learned how. My friends kind of helped, but I did most of the work. By the time we were done, it was decently dark out. The backyard lights were on, casting a warm glow. It was now dark enough for us to play our favorite game, night prowlers. There were countless spots to hide in the backyard. We played in pairs. Jake and I hid first, while Lucas and Sam were the hunters. Jake and I split up. Our goal was to get back to the home base, which was the back porch. No camping by the porch was allowed. The tool shed was in a far corner of the yard, before the woods, so I crawled under it to hide. When the hunters began their search, they had to blow a whistle to let us know they were starting. Once I heard the whistle, I stayed under the shed, waiting it out and watching Lucas and Sam in the distance. I was waiting for the right moment to creep closer to the porch. I had my sights set on the tire swing, which was closer to the house. If I could make it there, I could sprint to the porch. When both Lucas and Sam had their backs turned, I sprinted towards the tire swing. Just as I ducked behind it, I heard one of the trash bins by the side of the house almost tip over. And then I noticed the motion detecting light on the side turn on. The tire swing wouldn't have triggered that light. I peeked around the corner towards the side yard and saw a tall person dressed in dark clothes quickly walking towards the woods. It wasn't my dad. I ran to my friends and called off the game, then went to tell my dad about what I saw. He came out and looked around the woods for a few minutes and then checked the street for any unusual cars. There was nothing. He said we should sleep inside tonight, which obviously bummed us out. We went inside and played a game on my Nintendo instead. I described to my friends what I saw. Some tall guy walking into the woods after apparently almost knocking over one of our trash bins. We talked about going back outside to sleep in the tents since they were already set up, What were the odds that whoever it was would still be out there hours later? After we finished our game, we quietly went back outside to not wake my dad. It wasn't like we were hiding the fact that we were going back out there, but we didn't want to advertise it either. We each had a sleeping bag. Jake and I shared a tent while Lucas and Sam shared the other. After a while of joking around and yelling things between tents, we started to quiet down and try to sleep. I wasn't asleep yet, but it seemed like Jake was. I started hearing footsteps in the grass nearby, approaching our tent. The zipper to the tent was unzipped, and I looked up, expecting to see my dad. Instead, I saw a stranger's face peering inside. He looked to be about my dad's age, but was someone I'd never seen before. "What are you guys doing out here?" he asked, his voice low and unsettling. I replied something like, "They wanted to sleep out here, so we came back out." As I took a closer look at the face peering into the tent, I realized it wasn't my dad. Panic surged through me. I screamed bloody murder, waking up Jake and the others. The man tried to grab our ankles and told us to be quiet, but he gave up when he realized we were about to wake the whole neighborhood. He left the tent and disappeared into the darkness. In the summer of 2019, I found myself at a friend's house nestled deep in the forests of North Carolina. Let's call her Lily. I was ecstatic about the sleepover, eager to catch up on high school gossip and enjoy a night away from the usual routine. Lily's house was isolated, surrounded by a dense canopy of towering trees, with the nearest neighbor several miles away. Behind her house, a steep, treacherous slope led down to a mist-shrouded creek, which seemed to hold a mysterious allure. The night started off as perfectly as we had hoped. Our friend Jess joined us for the evening. We played charades, scavenger hunts, and other high school favorites. The house was filled with laughter, snacks, and the hum of conversation. By midnight, we decided to take a walk down the dirt path that connected Lily's property to a few nearby homes. Lily's mom gave us permission, so we set out with a mix of excitement and curiosity. After about 20 minutes, we saw a man walking on the opposite side of the path. Initially, he appeared to be just another evening wanderer. But something felt off. He was dressed in a heavy dark coat, despite the balmy 70-degree weather. As we passed him, an overpowering, nauseating stench wafted through the air. A rancid odor so vile, it made Jess gag and cover her nose. Feeling uneasy, we decided it was best to head back. Jess was already on edge, pleading to return. As we turned around, we noticed that the man had also turned and was now following us. His pace was slow but deliberate, and with each step, the ominous sense of dread grew. We quickened our pace, and so did he. Our walking turned into a jog, then a full-on sprint as his footsteps echoed behind us. Panic set in when Jess let out a blood-curdling scream. Through the dim light of the street lamps, the police arrived within minutes and began their investigation. They interviewed us, took statements, and scoured the area. My parents picked me up, their faces etched with worry. They held me tightly, their embrace both comforting and suffocating. I was forbidden from attending sleepovers after that night, a rule that lingered for years. Years later, the full horror of that night became clear. The police eventually apprehended the man, and they discovered an old, dilapidated cabin hidden deep in the woods, a cabin we had once joked about exploring. Inside, they found multiple bodies, all in various stages of decay. The stench that had clung to the man was the odor of rotting flesh. If not for our decision to return to the house that night, we might have found ourselves in that cabin, becoming part of the gruesome collection. To this day, the memory of that night sends shivers down my spine. It taught me that the real danger sometimes comes from the shadows we least expect, those lurking at the edge of our understanding, waiting for the right moment to strike.